And a lot of the people that's been doing this career for the last 20 to even 40 years are coming of an age of retirement, right? Or health has kept them from going back to work, whatever the case may be. They're older generation, right?
Right.
And if no one learns these trades, then trades will die.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about just HVAC. I'm talking plumbing, electrical, roofing, bricklaying,
The kind of stuff that
concrete work.
robots can't do.
Absolutely.
James Thomason, brother-in-law. What's up, man?
Not much, brother.
How was your flight in?
It was good.
Good?
It was a little delayed, but we made it.
Yeah, it was a little delayed. I was supposed to pick you up at the airport at like 10:55, I think, is when you were supposed to land.
Yep.
And then it delayed for about a half hour, but it landed right on time. And
Yep. It was supposed to fly out at 9:15, I think, and
Yeah.
we left at 9:45. Something.
I hate picking up at airports. I hate it. It's nuts.
I agree.
It's it's the most. When I was down there, I was like, man, there's got to be a better system than this. You know, they yell at you if you're there for more longer than 2 minutes.
They yell if you stop. They yell if you're moving.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Yes, it's nuts. Well, I wanted to talk to you about your law enforcement career first.
Okay.
Because you're no longer a law enforcement officer, but when you were working for the Memphis Police Department.
No, I was actually outside of Memphis.
Outside of Memphis,
Yeah, I worked
okay.
for...
You lived in Memphis.
I lived in Memphis as I grew up as a kid, and then we moved to Tipton County, which is the county just to the north of Memphis. So we were about 35, 40 minutes north
Right on.
of the main part of Memphis. And I was an officer there for about 10 years, and a little small town. I think when I was there, we were a population of less than 10,000 at the time.
Wow.
And only had about 8 to 10 police officers at the time when I was there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
10 police officers for 10,000 people.
Yeah, something about
Wow.
like that.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah.
We got 75,000. I guess that's not really for here. We got about 75 officers across all three shifts for 75,000 people. I don't think it's enough because we got 40 square miles here.
Right.
And in my opinion, in a city this size, I would like to see one officer per square mile.
Right.
Across all three shifts.
Or at least 2-man cars to
Yeah.
cover an
Yeah.
area for sure.
So when you were that close to Memphis, did you see any like crime from Memphis coming to your area?
Yeah, so the major thoroughfare through our county, through the area I worked, was U.S. Highway 51, which travels north and south. So it travels pretty much from Chicago to Memphis.
Wow.
And then even beyond Memphis, further south. But so a lot of traffic, drug traffic, things like that, gang traffic, stuff like that, traveled that main highway.
Right.
So we did see some traffic and crime, if you will, from the Memphis area would overflow. But
Yeah.
as far as actual people that we dealt with in the city itself was pretty minor compared to, Memphis for sure.
Right.
But not a real high crime area.
Right on. So I've always wondered, like, I always ask every law enforcement officer that it's on the show or that I talk to, like, what were the most common issues that came up in your career?
Obviously, I think domestics was probably one of the largest calls that we would get as far as the amount of times we would get that same call.
Right.
Not always at the same location, but just definitely domestic violence calls as a whole were probably the highest ranked calls that we would get.
Oh, yeah.
In a small town, we got a lot of, BS calls, things
Right.
that really didn't amount to anything, noise complaints or, somebody's cow was out in the middle of the night, something silly like that. But for the most part, it was domestics, a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
working traffic calls and speeding and things like that. But as far as like just your regular calls, DUIs, somebody call in, somebody that's weaving all over the road, something
Yeah.
to that effect. But domestics is probably the one that stands out. That and My pet peeve's always been unruly juveniles.
Oh yeah.
They want police officers to come raise their kids for them.
That's a huge issue here, man. So we listen to the scanner sometimes. I don't listen to it quite as much as I used to, but it was always wanting to know what's going on around me
Right.
when I'm out in town or whatever.
Sure.
And I did notice quite a bit of calls from parents calling in saying that they had unruly kids, and usually it was like real young, 9, 10 years old, and I didn't understand that. Why would you call the police to handle that kind of issue? And it's like it's an abuse of police. Number one, in my opinion. Number two, it makes the police look bad to the kids that they're dealing with.
Right. I agree 100%.
And I don't know why anybody would want, because law enforcement is important. I understand the need for law enforcement.
Right.
I just don't think it should be preventative for kids. I don't think kids should have to look at law enforcement that way, because law enforcement is there to help children
Right.
and protect children. And I don't see a whole lot of parents caring about that.
Well, and I think the reason parents are calling as much as they are is because they're scared. I can't tell you how many times I would go into a home and the parent tell me that the kid's being unruly, and I ask them, well, what do you want me to do?
Right.
What do you, well, they need their butt whooped. I was like, okay, so
I can't do that.
why aren't you doing that? And they're like, well, I can't. And I'm like, why can't you? And I had a motto, and I tell people this all the time: from the top of their butt crack to the top of their knees belongs to you until they're 18, and they can take possession of that part of their body when they move out. Until then, it's yours.
Right.
And they're like, they look at me like I've got 6 eyeballs or something, because they're like, how can that be? And I'm like, that's the way it is.
Yes.
My parents disciplined me that way, so why would you want to discipline your children differently? And I'm not saying that spanking is always the answer, but most of the time when I ask them, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Well, they really just need their butt whooped. Okay, so
Go
do
whoop
that.
their butt.
Do that.
Go whoop their butt.
And I've had one story I tell regularly where it was a 16-year-old girl, and mom called, unruly juvenile. I get there. It's kind of a pet peeve call for me, because I did get tired of raising other people's children for them.
Right.
And the mom told me that. I said, what do you want me to do? She said, well, today was report card day. She didn't want to give me a report card. I said, well, she's 16. You're the parent, so you get the report card. Now, this was before digital era, where everything was still given to the kid to take home to the parent to sign back, the way it was probably when you and I were in school,
Yeah.
right? And so, she says she wouldn't give it to me. And I said, well, then what do you want me to do? She says, well, she needs her butt whooped. And I said, well, okay, why don't you do that? And she says, well, I can't. And I said, why can't you? Well, they'll call the police. I said, well, lucky for you, I'm here. I'm already here. So what are we going to do now? And, we went on and talked some more, and, she gave me more insight to her daughter. And so as it come down to it, I said, okay, well, what are we going to do? She said, well, she needs her butt whooped. And I said, okay, well, let's go do that. So we go back to the bedroom where the daughter's at, watching TV, typical 16-year-old attitude. The mom told her, says, get up, you're going to get a whooping. And she's like, you're not going to whoop me. And I said, young lady, you've got 2 choices. You can either get up the easy way or the hard way. It's your choice. And I don't know if you've ever been around very many black women, but
Yep.
they don't count when they spank. They
Yep.
just start spanking sometimes, and it's
Right.
quite comical. And she spanked her with a belt, and I stood there, and I actually held her hands up because the daughter went to block it with her hands, and
Right.
I held her hands up while her mom spanked her. And that's one story I tell regularly when people ask me about stuff, and it's like also a rewarding story to
Right.
the end of that, because I guess it was a couple of years later. I was at the local McDonald's, and this girl comes up to me and she goes, do you remember me? And I'm like, no, I don't. And she told me her address. And I said, yeah, I know who you are. And she said, well, I just want to tell you thank you. She said, my mom and I are best friends. I'm graduating in a couple of weeks, And I just want to tell you, thank you for, being there and intervening in my life at that time. I guess I just needed a wake up call.
Hell
And so I
yeah.
was like, that's, everybody says, why are you a cop? Well, because I want to do good for people. That's the generic answer. And that was one of those situations where it did come back around, and I was able to find out that it worked out well for her.
That's
But,
awesome.
but yeah, I mean, unruly juveniles was always a pet peeve of mine. So those are just the calls. Like I said, I don't like raising other people's kids. I got my own to raise. Well, I don't want to raise theirs too.
Right. Back when we were kids, if we'd have said something like, you can't hit me, I'm going to call CPS. My mom, when I was a kid, would have handed me the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to reach to grab it, she would have beat me in the head with it.
Right.
And CPS and there's a lot of people, therapists and all kinds of like counselors and stuff that will say that there's a fine line between abuse and discipline.
Absolutely.
I don't think so. I don't think there's a fine line. I think it's a very clear line.
Oh yeah, I agree too.
And it starts with intention. Do you intend to abuse your children? And if the answer is yes, then don't touch them. Don't hit them. But when it comes to discipline, if you don't discipline at all, we see what happens. Mm-hmm. Lawlessness, there's no respect with the younger generations that have no discipline. And it worries me sometimes because we're in a completely different world now than we were when we were kids. It's digital. Everything's digital.
Yep.
It's so easy to find people nowadays. If I just Google my name, like my address comes up, mm-hmm. and that's scary, Sure. So I do everything I can to delete that information. But these kids today, they have no fear of saying something that might get them punched in the mouth.
Right. It's a lack of respect, and I think it starts at the top.
Yes.
And I think it, I'm personally blessed in the sense that my parents are still married, been married for 50 plus years, but the
shout out, hi mom.
The reality is that the respect is taught at home, and if the parents respect each other, and then they respect their kids, they teach their kids respect, and it really just all snowballs and falls downhill.
Right.
And the problem I think with society is there's a lack of respect, and a lot of that's a lack of respect for themselves.
Yes.
I mean, from the way females dress to the way females act in public to the way males act towards females, a lot of that is just I think that all comes back to self-respect. And if you don't have respect for yourself, then you definitely can't have respect for others. And it's
Right.
kind of like the old saying, you got to love yourself before you can love others. You got to respect yourself before you can respect
Absolutely.
others. And I think that the problem is that as a society, there's no respect. There's no respect for yourself. There's no respect for authority. There's no respect for elders. How many people I see walk in a door in front of an older lady or an older couple or older man even and not hold the door for them. And that's part of me as a Southern person, born and raised in the South. It's a Southern hospitality thing. But
Oh, yeah.
to me, it's just common courtesy. I mean, they've lived long enough that I can at least open the door for them
Oh, yeah.
or hold the door for them, right? And so it's just a respect thing. And I think that respect's the root of all of it. And that's my personal opinion, but I think that's huge.
Yeah. I see that every day at the grocery store too. But I do see a lot of people holding doors for each other, but they don't look each other in the eye. They don't say anything. No thank yous. No, you're
smile,
welcome.
nothing.
No. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you remember that old song, I'm in a hurry to get things. Like it seems like everybody's in a hurry to go nowhere.
Absolutely.
And it's maddening sometimes
Sure.
to look into like it's like everything's in going in fast, like sped up in fast motion, and then you're standing there in slow motion and watching everybody just move around you, and it's nuts. And
Sure.
which brings me to my your current career. You are a HVAC technician and salesman.
I am.
So you work with the public just as much now as you did when you were a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I've been solving people's problems for my entire adult life. So I started out of high school. I did not go to college. I went and started in the workforce. My dad's probably the best advice he's ever given me. If you don't go to college, learn a trade. So
Hell
I
yeah.
did, and I learned HVAC, heating, cooling, electrical, and all of that, and got into that right out of high school. So I was solving people's problems from the jump, and
Hell
then I
yeah.
got into law enforcement, still solving other people's problems. Law enforcement came to an end, and went back to what I knew, that trade that Dad told me to learn, and I've been solving people's problems still.
Why'd
So
you leave law enforcement?
I had a back injury from an automobile accident. Had some back surgery, didn't heal back as well as we had hoped, and quite honestly, I had been getting burnt out anyway,
Yeah.
and I've always tell people it's kind of the good Lord's way of giving me an out, if you will. I
Right.
mean, I did get injured, but not life-threatening, so to speak, but
Right.
definitely career-ending. And so I got out of it and went back to what I had done previously after having this whole year and a half to decide what I want to be when I grow up after 15 years of doing the same thing. And so, yeah, I went back into the HVAC industry and relearned, got caught up after 15 years of being away from it. And that's what I do now. So now I'm still solving people's problems
Hell
every
yeah.
day.
So you had mentioned not going to college
Correct.
and learning a trade.
Yes.
Now, you don't have to get specific, but I know how much you make. And I think it is awesome that so I think we are missing people in the trades right now.
Hands
And a
down.
lot of people are misunderstand the amount of money that you can make.
Yep.
And you're at the mid six figures, right?
Yeah.
So that's freaking impressive.
Yeah.
Especially where you live. Like you live in Tennessee.
Yes.
And six-figure incomes aren't that uncommon, but mid six-figure, is.
Yeah, they're
And-
definitely in the higher tier.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we're above average,
Right.
for the area we live in, the amount of money that we make. But back to what you said though, that we're missing the point with trades.
Yes.
I have this conversation, I would say probably weekly with somebody, but the problem we have is that if you think about it, I'm 46, and a lot of the people that's been doing this career for the last 20 to even 40 years are coming of an age of retirement, right? Or health has kept them from going back to work, whatever the case may be. They're older generation, right?
Right.
And if no one learns these trades, then trades will die.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about just HVAC. I'm talking plumbing, electrical, roofing, bricklaying,
The kind of stuff that
concrete work.
robots can't do.
Absolutely. The stuff that it takes a hands-on approach to do.
Yeah.
And it takes grunt work, and it takes hard work, and it takes dedication, but you've got to learn it. And if you learn it, man, you can pave your own path.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
whether it's learning it, excelling at it, and doing it for someone else, or going out on your own and doing it for yourself and having your own business, because the industry I'm in is no different than lawn care business. And I don't know about here in St. Joe, but at home, there's a different person cutting lawn. There'll be 5 or 6 different lawn care companies on the same street
Yes.
cutting different people's yards.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's enough to go around. So it's not like you're getting into something you're not going to be able to make money at.
Yeah.
And so, at the end of the day, somebody still got to make sure you got water.
Oh,
They
yeah.
got to make sure your waste goes out the sewage.
Right.
They've got to make sure your electricity's there. The things that we take for granted because we didn't grow up in an era without,
Right.
people nowadays will not go without.
Right.
No one's going to go without water. No one's going to go without electricity, and no one's going to go without air conditioning.
Right.
They may go without heat to some point in some parts of the country, but you're not going to go without air conditioning. Nobody wants to be hot.
Right.
And so, those are 3 things. They're not a want. They're a need.
Right.
And those trades, somebody's got to do it. And if
Exactly.
somebody don't learn it, it's going to die.
Right.
And
And when we're talking about college with my oldest son, he was like, I don't know what I want to do when I go to college. And I'm like, why are you going to college?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, that's just what you do. And I was like, well, hold on a minute. You barely survived high school. Why would you want to drown yourself in a bunch of loans and
Debt.
not learn anything?
Yep.
that's going to be useful to your life.
Right.
And, be stuck pretty much.
Right.
You're going to use, your good years going to college and learning stuff that you'll never use. And so we have that. I've had that conversation with my kids about the world needs ditch diggers too. That's what I always say. And the United States was built on hard work and sacrifice. And we're to a point now in the United States where our infrastructure is failing and it's getting worse by the day.
Right.
And I tell these kids that I talk to sometimes, like, if you don't want to live in a third world country, you're going to have to learn how to do some of this stuff because we're all getting too old to do it.
Yep. And if you don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, you're going to have to get out and put some manual labor into it. And
That's
I can
right.
tell you that for a fact. I spent 15 years in law enforcement. And as ashamed as I am to say it, I never made over $40,000 a year as a
Right.
police officer. And I worked for 2 different departments and never made over $40,000 for the year. And without working a second job or even sometimes 3 jobs to make that difference. My first year out of law enforcement at the company I'm at, I made $75,000 my first year.
Wow.
And I was a maintenance technician. And all I was doing was washing people's air conditioning system.
Yep. Yeah.
But overtime was there. Incentives were there to make extra, to sell add-ons, things like that, I picked up on. And blessed as I am to be able to talk to people, I don't meet a stranger. A lot of that's from my law enforcement days. I had to talk to people. I had to learn to get out of my comfort zone and speak to random people about random things whenever I needed to.
Yeah.
And so it's developed into an ability that I have to communicate with people. I'm a good communicator.
Yeah, you are.
And so when it comes to that, I was able to sell those things and I made extra money and I could work the overtime. And, you can ask my wife, man, I'd worked 26, 27 out of 30 days on call.
Yeah.
And worked all the hours I could. I have as many as 85 hours in a week and a 40-hour week. So I'm working basically working 2 weeks in 1 week's time.
Yep.
And making overtime. And so, yeah, I hustled, but I don't have a problem hustling. And the problem today is we don't have hustlers.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no one under the age of 30, I think, that even can come. I could still outwork people at 46 years old that are less than 30 years old just because I know how to hustle and they don't.
That drives me nuts, man. When I'm doing something, man, I've got to do it with purpose, if that makes sense. I don't want to, if I'm like, for instance, if I'm digging a ditch out in the front yard, I don't want that to take all day.
Right.
I'm going to get in and get my hands dirty and do it the best that I know how. These kids today will do more work trying to figure out how to get out of work
Absolutely.
than they would if they just did it.
Absolutely. I tell the guys all the time, so I'm in the sales department. So I'm responsible for selling heating and cooling jobs as well as electrical jobs or plumbing jobs.
Right.
And my area of expertise is air conditioning, heating and cooling, HVAC. So when our install guys go out to a job, I get so annoyed because they go out to a job and we have a lot of different type systems. Right. And we have what's called split systems, which is for people that don't know is where you got a part inside and a part outside. We were talking about this the other night, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the parts inside in our area are in attics. Well, what happens in an attic in the summertime?
It's hot.
It's hot as hell in an attic.
Yeah.
I mean, I've burnt myself in an attic on like just a piece of metal that's doesn't have a fire to it. It's just laying there being still at rest in an attic and it's hot.
Yeah.
So these guys will get to a job in the morning and they'll start on the unit outside instead of the unit that's in the attic. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, get the hardest part, most hated part of your job done first.
Right.
And then relax throughout the day. That's my way of working. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like you. If I'm going to dig a ditch, I'm going to go out there and work as hard as I can until I can't work hard and hope that I have the majority of it done.
Right.
By the time I'm wore out. So I want to get into the hottest part of the attic. I want to do the hardest part of the part I don't like doing. I want to do first to get it over with.
Yeah.
These guys will put it off to the last thing. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's the part you dread the most.
Right. Right.
Why prolong doing it? Now you're tired. You're hot.
Pissed off.
You're hungry. You're whatever. By the end of the day, you've been there 8 hours. and now you're having to do the part you hate doing the most.
Right.
Like, I'm with you. I got to have a purpose. And to me, the purpose is to get to the part I enjoy.
Right.
So I want to get the part I don't like out of the way first to get to the part I enjoy.
And it takes less time I think, to do it that way as well.
And I'm an analogy guy, so you got to forgive me. I'm going to use a lot of analogies. But it's like a candy bar. Why do they put the package on the outside of the candy bar? Well, you got to get through the package to get to the part you want, right? You got to get through the hard part to get to the part that's enjoyable, which is the candy bar.
Right.
So rip the bandage off, get the hard part done, then get to the good stuff. And so that's what I tell these guys. And they still don't quite get it. I'll still go out to these jobs that are still doing it the same way. And I just scratch my head. And I'm like, well, okay. It's you, not me.
Right. And you don't see with some of those guys, like when I worked with, so when I worked, I don't work, this is what I do for a living now. Right. But when I worked, I was in construction, underground utilities. And when I would see something that needs to be done, I would do it. Mm-hmm. That's what I was paid to do. And I noticed the longer I went with this particular job, if we got new people in, they would stand around and wait until they were told to do something before they moved. And I get that with new people, but once you've been there a month or two, you kind of got the feeling of what needs to be done or what should be done.
Right.
Nobody should be telling you what to do.
Right.
And, like you're grown people. Mm-hmm. It's explained to you and you're trained how to do your job. On a job like that, that's essentially, my job was essentially the same every day. There was different things that could happen. We have emergencies, we have things break down, whatever. But essentially the job was the same every day.
Right.
And I'm trying to tell these guys, like, look, it's the same processes every day. When we come in here, we got to get the trucks filled with water. We got to mix the stuff. We got to get on the site. We got to hook this up, hook that up. And then we start, and then it's easy for the rest of the day. Right. And like you said, if you get that stuff, the hard stuff done in the middle of the day or in the beginning of the day, in the middle of the day, everything's so easy. And you can just basically just shut off your brain, listen to some music, and get to work.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, people just stop doing that.
If it's 85 to 95 degrees outside, it's 100 degrees or more in an attic.
Yeah.
And like, why would you want to be up there on the hottest part of the day is about 2 p.m.
Right.
So why would you want to be in a 100-degree attic at 2 p.m. when you could be outside in the 85 to 90 degree temperatures where the wind's blowing? You got a breeze, something that's just, I don't know. And plus the outside part of the air conditioning is easier anyway.
Right.
So again, I've always just been that way. As a kid, I guess, I've always just wanted to get the hard part done first.
Yeah.
I tease all the time, like, I used to work. I told you I worked all that overtime. My goal every week was to hit 40 hours by Wednesday.
Yeah.
If I could hit 40 hours by Wednesday, then I could coast the rest of the week, because then I was in overtime, time and a half. I done made my money for the week.
Right.
If I got sick or hurt, I at least got my 40, busted my tail and got it for the first 3 days. I'd work, 10, 12 hours a day if I had to. I'd get to 40 hours as quick as I could. That's when I started making money.
Hell yeah.
So I don't know, a little more driven, I guess, than some of these younger guys.
And that's the thing.
That drives me mad because I don't understand it.
I don't understand it either.
Me and managers talk about it all the time. Like, I don't understand the mentality.
I do get it if you're satisfied with where you are. I do kind of get it, because there are some people that they don't want to work really hard their whole lives, and there are some people that are just content with not having much. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Right.
There's a lot of people not trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're just trying to provide for their family, and I understand that.
Well, a lot of that, I have a huge competitive nature. So, I'm quite competitive at almost anything I do. So for me, it's a competition with myself, if nothing else.
I identify with that.
To be that way, it's like I want to, if you're not first, you're last, so Ricky Bobby,
shake and bake, baby.
That's right. Yeah. If you're not first, you're last. And, and to some point, that's the way I look at a lot of things, it's competition, and everything that I do, I find some way to make it competitive. And that's what drives me.
And it makes it fun.
And I like, the job I'm at now, and, I strive to be the top salesperson for the company. I strive to be that every day. I've been successful. I was top salesperson last year for the year 2024. Out of about 60 salespeople, I was the number one salesman for the year.
You want to give your people a shout out?
I can.
It's up to you. I don't. You can be silent about it or give them a shout out. It's up to you.
I'll probably just leave it out because I don't know how they feel about that.
That's
I'll
perfect.
leave that out just because I don't want to mess up with anything there. But it is one of the largest privately owned heating and cooling companies in the country. We're in the top 5.
That's nuts.
And we're definitely one of the largest in the state, and we cover 4 states. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, and Florida.
Hell yeah.
But every week we get a report every Friday of we call it the drill down, the dashboard, whatever you want to call it, the leaderboard,
Yeah.
and see where everybody's running at for sales for the month. And I strive to be at the top of that. I've been at the top of it a few times. I've been towards the bottom of it, and I've made my way back to the top of it. I've had the come from behind stories, and but to me, it's friendly competition.
Yeah.
I don't hate on the people at the top, and but I definitely hate when I'm in the bottom because, like I say, if you're not first, you're last. If there's not always a reward for second place.
That's right.
And so,
that's right.
But that's just how I work. That's how my brain works. Is I'm going to be competitive about it. It's no different than when I put in the GPS. It tells me it's 3.5 hours. I'm going to do my best to make it in 3. It's a competition,
Yes.
man.
Oh my gosh.
I got to cut that time. I give my wife a hard time yesterday about it. We were going to Topeka, and we were supposed to be there at 7. So we were going to be there at 7:10. I said, well, we're going to be 10 minutes late. And so a little while down the road, she goes, check out that time. It was 7:02. So she had done cut 7 minutes off somehow. I don't know how she did it, but I was like, yeah, I like the competition.
Following the speed limits across that, it's really hard to do because there's nothing out there, and you don't. There's it's wide open space, and the speed limit is ridiculously low for. But I think which way did you go? Did you take the turnpike?
We took the interstate to Kansas City and then took it over to Topeka. I don't know. I'm the passenger. I wasn't driving.
So was it highway or was it
interstate?
back roads?
It was interstate to go over there, but then when we came back. It brought us back. I guess the back way through Atchison.
Yeah, so that
that's
way
a
is only
2-lane.
60 miles an hour
Yeah.
is the top speed. And so I used to drive back and forth to Topeka for work all the time. And so it takes less time to go the back way, and it's actually faster, but
Right.
your speed limit's lower, so it's
Right.
boring.
Oh yeah, that's what I made the comment. So
We're good.
okay. We actually went over last night and ended up staying the night because we stayed there and hung out, and it got late, and instead of trying to drive back, so they had a place for us to stay. So we stayed the night and then just got up this morning and drove back. But we came back through Atchison, and I made the comment like, if you need gas or anything out here, you're out of luck. There's
Right.
nothing out here. There's no soft drinks. There's nothing. You're in the middle of nothing. But
It's a bunch of dirt.
Yeah.
It's like people think of Kansas as being flatland, and there is some hills around, but it is mostly just flat and boring and dry.
Yep. That road was definitely that. I think she made the comment. She says, I don't think you've been this way before. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely don't remember being through here. So
We're never coming this way ever
yeah,
again.
if we're going back, we're not going this way.
Because like in
We
between,
go at night, it'd be all right, I guess, because it's dark anyway. But
I think
daytime, there's
halfway
nothing there.
between Kansas City and Topeka on the turnpike, there's a big ass McDonald's. So
Yeah.
there's something,
Right.
And the turnpike, the speed limit's 70 miles an hour, I think.
Yeah.
So you can go, 75 without feeling bad. But yeah, when we talk about, you had also said, that sometimes even when you don't have anybody to compete with, you compete with yourself.
Absolutely.
I identify with that because we have a side gig that we do Monday through Friday in the evenings. We go and we work for a company that cleans offices.
Okay.
And so we help out with that. And my goodness, it pays pretty damn good for what little time it actually takes. But it's hard work. And so you're actually working hard for the money. But my part of the job, I have to do by myself. And I don't have anybody to compete with but myself. So I will try to get one area done quicker the next day than I did the day before. And I do all that, and I try to do things not only quicker but better.
Right.
And so I'll just say it, my job is taking out the trash. And so
Been doing that your whole life, ain't you?
yeah. So my goal when I come in there is to be ultimately faster than the day before, but I want all the trash cans to look better
Right.
than I came in. I want them all to be nice. I want them and it's the silly little things like that, the attention to detail that people appreciate even when they don't know. And so when I'm not cleaning or when I'm not going and taking out trash, they notice that I'm gone because their trash bags look all fucky.
Right.
So it's for me, I am competitive with myself, and I
Right.
think it actually is helpful for me to complete tasks, to have that in my head that, I want to be faster today than I was yesterday.
Right.
And I really like that. And when I explain to people I do that, like people are like, yeah, I do that too. But it's so, I think that's a way to not only take pride in your work, but like it makes it so much more fun. It makes it faster. It doesn't, like, you're not looking at the clock and watching the secondhand tick. You're
Right.
by the end of the day, you're like, oh shit, that didn't take as long as I thought.
Right. Yeah, it's just personal motivation
Yeah.
for me. It's just, like I said, and I find myself being that way in all facets of what I do, whether it's mowing my yard or, I want it to look better today than it did the last time I cut it,
Yeah.
and that's, a strange thing for me. It's one of my favorite pastimes.
Yeah.
And is mowing grass. And
That's so fun.
Other than that is coloring in a coloring book. So here I am, 6'8", and I'm a big guy, but coloring in a coloring book is fun to me. And I have my aunt to thank for that,
cathartic.
because as a kid, that's what we did. When I was born, my mom's sister still lived at home.
Right.
And was still in school. And when I would go stay the night with my aunt and my grandparents, that's what we did. And, we'd color in coloring books, and I can remember it vividly. Grandmother had one of those butter cookie tins,
Yeah.
full of crayons. Like every crayon that had ever been bought, I guess, was in that tin, and we would sit there and we would just color, and for hours and hours. And so, I don't know. And as I've gotten older, I've identified it as a self gratification.
Yeah.
And so when I'm done, I can look back and say, hey, I did that. I can't draw.
Yeah.
I don't have any artistic ability, but I can color between the lines, and I can make it look as pretty as I can.
I
right?
can't even do that.
And so for
I
me,
can't color in the lines.
yeah, well, for me, it's I cut the grass. It's weeds, but it's my weeds, and when it's done, I like the way it looks. I can sit back and say, hey, I did that.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
kind of my thing. So
I talked about that on the podcast a couple weeks ago about, like, I was mowing the lawn and it was hot, and I ended up making myself, like, not sick, but I ended up getting cramps because I didn't drink enough and I was sweating or whatever. And I push mow part of the lawn and weed eat and all that stuff. I was out there for like 3.5 hours. But when I was done, I was tired, but I looked around. Man, this looks good.
Yeah.
I'm best lawnmower on the block.
my yard looks better than everybody.
That's
in
right.
my mind. So.
I compete with my 70-some-year-old neighbor, dude. He comes out and mows his lawn. Well, he used to. Now he's got a service. But his service comes and mows the lawn. I got to go out there and mow my lawn because it can't look worse than the neighbors.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can ask my wife.
You compete with your neighbors too?
Well, I compete with myself. If it gets a little tall, I'm cutting it.
Yeah.
I've been known to cut my grass twice in a week. It's just because it's therapeutic for me. I enjoy it, and
your yard looks great.
and
too.
I can't stand it to be clumpy. So if it means, like, I cut it before we left because I knew I cut it. So I cut it Monday. I think it was Monday. I cut it Monday and then cut it again on Thursday because I knew it was going to rain while we were gone. And if
Yeah.
I came back on Monday and I wasn't able to do it on Monday, then it'd be Tuesday or beyond. And then
Yeah.
by the time I cut it, it's going to be too tall, and then it's going to be clumpy, and I can't stand clumpy yard.
Yeah, it looked like crap when
I said,
it's
I'll
done.
cut it. I'll cut it. I'll spend the extra gas. I'll cut it even if I'm cutting 1/4 of an inch off. That's
Actually,
better than nothing.
I don't think it takes more gas to do it that way. I think it takes less because, you know, like the resistance of on your blades is less.
Well, or for me, I go down and then I come right back over
Me
the
too.
same path
Yeah.
if it's too tall, so that I'm basically cutting each stripe twice.
Yeah.
So in sense, I'm cutting the yard twice in one sitting versus cutting it down and back, down and back, down and back. Now I'm going down, back, down, back. You know what I mean? I'm doing.
That's so funny because
and
I
so-
do the exact same
Yeah.
thing. I mow my lawn 3 times
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
But if I'm cutting it and it's tall, then I go down the path and then come back the same path.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's not as tall, I go down a path and then come down beside it. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
I'm making it that way. I don't know
Yeah.
how to describe that, but yeah.
Well, you know, making different patterns.
Yeah.
Like I mow.
Oh yeah, I never cut it the
I mow
same
in
way
opposite
twice.
directions. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll cut it crossways. I'll cut it diagonal. I'll cut it long ways. It's just whatever.
The problem I have with my yard right now is we've got some drainage issues. We got a little bit of a puddle in the backyard when it rains.
Yeah.
And so our grass grows a little funny there. And the grass is so compacted, or the dirt is so compacted. We've lived here for 11 years and we've never done anything to the lawn. We were renting for 10 years. We never aerated the lawn. We never seeded. We don't water it even. And I was telling my wife, I was like, hey, you know, when we spend a little bit of money, I want to do the lawn. I want to have a landscaping crew come in and take care of the drainage issues. And I want a retaining wall put in the backyard. And that way that all the drainage issues will be like a step, like with the retaining wall, you got all that gravel and stuff underneath. So for the drainage, and then
Right.
it'll drain right out the backyard. And I told her, I said, $2,000 and we won't have to mess with the lawn for another 10 years. And I'm like, let's do that because I love a good looking green plush lawn. And another thing that's killing our lawn is moles, man.
Oh yeah, we've got those really bad too.
You know how to get rid of those.
No.
Get rid of the food that feeds them. So
Which is the grubs, I guess.
yes. If you have, that's one of the issues with our yards, the drainage issues. It brings in grubs and allows the moisture to sit in the yard, which also makes it easier for the moles to go through.
Right.
And then there's there's castor oil treatments that you can use that kills moles as well. Well, it doesn't kill moles, but they don't like castor oil apparently, so they stay away.
Yeah, I just don't know where to put it because there's too many deadgum hills or mounds or whatever you want to call it throughout
Yeah,
the yard.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I don't know which one they're using because there's too many of them. And I've got a big yard. You've seen my front yard.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if I go out there and start mole hunting, if you will, and trying to figure out how to get rid of them, I don't know
Like
where to start
Caddyshack.
and where to end. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Hell yeah, that's so funny. So man, back to the college thing. And what do you think if you were talking to let's just say a 17-year-old kid who doesn't know what they want to do for their life, they don't know if they want to be a plumber for 30 years. What would your advice be for that 17-year-old kid coming out of high school that they don't know what they want to do for a career?
Well, for me, I'm probably going to profile them a little bit, be honest with you, just because I'm gonna have just some general conversation with them,
Yeah.
just to see what kind of like their mentality is. No offense, one person to the other.
Right.
Their size, what size person they are. Because here's the thing, you know, you and I both have been larger guys.
Oh yeah.
So crawling into a crawl space to do plumbing might not be ideal for you.
Right.
Even getting into an attic might not be ideal for you.
Yeah,
But
I can't fit into my own attic.
There's definitely ways that, you know, I would probably try to help them with the obvious, like I said, what they physically look like, maybe some of their mentality. I can give you a scenario. My son.
Yeah. That's a
He
perfect
was,
example, actually.
Very undecided what he wanted to do. He originally said he wanted to be an electrician. And I said, well, why do you want to be an electrician? And he said, I don't know. I just thought it'd be a good job. And I said, okay. I said, well, first of all, being an electrician, before you can get to the point of actually making good money as an electrician, you've got to learn a lot. And when I say learn a lot, I'm not talking about how to plug in an outlet or how to wire a switch. I'm talking about codes. You've got the national electrical code that you've got to know.
Right.
Plus you've got jurisdictional codes from city or counties.
Local,
Local stuff. So there's a lot to codes when it comes to that you've got to learn. So you've got to have the mental capacity to be willing to learn that and want to learn that before you're going to get to the point of making any good money as an electrician.
And then all that shit changes like
all the time
at the drop of a hat. Yeah.
So, I asked him, and that's what he told me. I said, well, why not HVAC? I said, if nothing else, it's something I know and I can help teach you and I can help you learn it while you're on the job.
Right.
So he still wasn't sure. Luckily, the company I worked for, he was able to get a job at another location, and they kind of made him a floater type position. So he got to kind of float around between plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and then he moved to where I was at, and he came in and was working in the HVAC installation department. My advice to anybody real quick is if you're going to pick one of those is you need to start at the bottom.
Right.
And it's not to penalize you, it's to make you better at your job. And most people don't look at it that way. Yeah. They're like, well, I want to make what you're making and you've been doing it for 25 years. I want to make what you're making and do what you're doing because that's the job I want. Well, I didn't get here in 25 years by walking in the door doing what I'm doing now.
Right.
I had to work my way to it. And that's where the generation doesn't understand that part. That's where that whole work ethic comes in. And, they want to make, I've got this motto, they want to make the most amount of money they can make with the least amount of work as possible.
Yes. I think that goes for all of us though at some point.
We do, but they come out of, I guess maybe I had that mentality as a kid, and fresh working, but at the same time, I knew I had a road to travel.
Right.
And I had to start at the bottom rung of the ladder to get to the top of the ladder. And a lot of them, I think, see the top of the ladder and they don't realize how to get there, except they just want to go to the top.
Right.
And they don't realize you've got to take the steps to get there.
Right.
And so my son, we had this conversation and I said, well, if you're going to do this, you need to start at the bottom. So you need to be in installation department first and learn how to put the units in before you learn how to work on them, before you learn how to sell them. It just goes all together. That's how I started. And so he went into the HVAC department and tried that for a while. And then he helped out in plumbing. And he's like, wow, this requires a little less mental thought process.
Yeah.
This is a little easier. So he went over to the plumbing department. Now, again, for me, plumbing wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
I don't have any disrespect to plumbers, but I didn't want to deal with doo-doo.
Right.
I just didn't. I didn't want to deal with it, man.
For me, I don't want to deal with the water.
I just
anything wet.
I just didn't want to deal with somebody else's waste, man. And that was the hard part for me is I couldn't get past that. And plus smell, and I'm big on that.
Yes. I know how you are with smells.
And so for me, he tried the plumbing, and then he came back to HVAC, and then they were going to make him a lead person in the HVAC install department where he had to be responsible for jobs. And he was just not one that cared for that responsibility, didn't feel he had enough experience to be at that level.
Right.
So he wanted to go back to plumbing. So for him, it was just kind of the whole what fits him.
Right.
So when I'm having this conversation with a random person, I'm going to ask some questions to kind of fill out what kind of person they are, especially if I don't really know them.
Right.
Like if your son came to me, and I know him, but I don't know him.
Right.
And so I would ask questions like, to find out more about what kind of work ethic he has, if I can. It's where some of my law enforcement interview skills come in, pick up on some things and find out what kind of person he is. What kind of worker is he going to be? It's just like an interview. When we hired people, I was responsible for helping bring in technicians and hire and interview technicians. And that was some of the stuff I'd ask, it's like to try to learn what kind of person they are.
And
are they going to fit the mold, so to speak?
I think some people try to, and you automatically understand what kind of person you're dealing with some of those questions, because some people will answer them to the best of their abilities, but some people overthink them. And the overthinkers that are trying to think of the right answer instead of their answer, those are the people you kind of got to watch out for.
Sure. Well, I've been in the industry a while now, and there's people, and well, in all industries and all professions, people can interview really well.
Oh yeah.
We've had people interview really well and think, man, this is going to be a great employee. And then after about 3 months,
Yeah.
the true person comes out. They don't show up for work. They halfway do their job. All of those things. You're like, man, this isn't the same person I interviewed.
Right. And
I don't
sometimes
remember this
that
person.
crap drives me nuts sometimes, because it's like the old bait and switch, right? And I'd just rather you show me who you are right up front, you know? And for me, and I think this goes for almost any profession, showing up is half the job.
Sure.
As long as you show up, that's what most employers are willing to overlook being slow. Most employers are willing to overlook, learning issues. Like if it takes you a little longer to learn things than it does your neighbor over here, as long as you show up and are consistent, that employer is more likely to spend that money with you,
Right,
and develop you into the employee that they need, instead of, like always having to fight against somebody. Yep. And I try to tell people that all the time. Like if you just show up, like you're probably not going to get fired.
Right.
In 2025, if you show up, you don't even have to work anymore.
If we could just get people to show up.
Exactly.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times management has interviewed somebody, offered them a job, given them a start date, paid all the money, so if we hire somebody, we got to do, our company does a background check, a drug test, a driving record check. They invest hundreds of dollars before you ever even come to work the first day.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times they've done that. And then the first day of work to show up, and the person doesn't show up.
Yeah.
They've interviewed well, been offered a job, went through the process to be hired, given a start date shows up, and they're nowhere to be found. And then you find out through a text message, oh, I started working somewhere else. They offered me more money. Why didn't you let somebody know that?
Exactly.
Just communication.
And I think that part may come a little bit because employers do that to us. Like I've been on the opposite end of that, looking for jobs, and I'll apply. I'll think everything went great, and then I won't get a call back or no email. And I'm like, what the hell? Like they told me I was a shoo-in,
Yep.
and I think that's where a lot of that actually comes from. It becomes a dance.
Oh, it's a two-way street for sure. I mean, employers are just as guilty.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen with our company, where, interview somebody, hey, we'll let you know. We'll be in touch. We'll let you know. And then you never hear from them.
Right.
Now, whether they forgot about you or they decided not to hire you, I don't know. But I've seen it happen, so that's a two-way street. But, back to what you said, if I'm sitting there with somebody, I'm going to find out what kind of person they are, what they want to do.
Yeah.
And then if nothing else, man, I tell them, go to a place that offers multiple things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, our company offers HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. We actually have a training program. I will give a shout out to this. It's called Transition to Trades, and it's a program that was designed and organized with the military, and military personnel can come and use their GI Bill to pay for our training program. And with that, they can get certified and trained in all three trades if they wish. And then they can be offered a job with our company once completing it if they wanted to go in any one of those three trades.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was put in place because a lot of military personnel will go straight in the military out of high school.
Yep.
At 18 years old, and they've been in the military we've had people come to us that's been retired, that's been in the military 20 and 25 years, and then retire. And there's obviously different professions within the military, but I'm going to use an example. There's not many uses for a helicopter mechanic in the everyday world.
Yeah.
You know, they might be able to be working on all kinds of helicopters, but there's not a lot of job openings for helicopter mechanics.
Right.
And so they get out of the military. They don't have any other real training, knowledge of any of that stuff. So they can go to our program, get certified on, you know, any one of the three trades or all three, and then they can come to work for us and, you know, have a good solid job. Or they can take that training and they can go back to wherever they're from.
Yeah.
You know, so Clarksville, Tennessee is close by, which is where Fort Campbell's at.
Yeah.
And that's where this really originated. And so Fort Campbell's close to Nashville.
That is awesome.
And so a lot of these guys would get out of military in Fort Campbell, they come to our training program, but they might be from, I don't know, Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
And so they'll learn the trade and they can either stay and live in Nashville, or if they want to go back home to where they're from, they can take that knowledge with them and be able to go get a job, because it's a transition into a trade that they would not have been able to get without
That is amazing.
extreme amount of money or time. And a lot of people won't hire you without experience. So if
Yes,
you've got some
yes.
training, that's going to give you a shoe in to get a job.
Man,
But
that is awesome. I love that program. I wanted to ask also, like, do you think your experience in law, how old were you when you got into law enforcement?
I was 19.
So 19 years old, do you think that law enforcement, that 10, 15 years in law enforcement gave you a good base to, as a citizen and an employee, to continue on being successful?
I do. I credit a lot of things I learned in law enforcement helped me every day with the job I have now.
Yeah.
Even when I was a technician and not in sales, just being able to communicate with people.
So do you
being
think
able
we
to-
should make our kids go through like community service when they're young?
Man, I didn't go in the military, but I went through basic law enforcement academy, which
Yeah.
is like boot camp. And I really think that everybody at 18 should go through some form of boot camp just to get some structure and
That's interesting.
and guidance to if nothing else, man, just teach them some respect that they weren't taught possibly before then. Because
Right,
like I said
right.
earlier, we go back to this respect thing, and there's a lot of kids and people in general that are adults now that weren't showed respect,
Right.
didn't taught respect. And, you know, I don't know anybody that went in the military that come out of the boot camp and didn't have some level of respect they probably
Right.
didn't have before they went in, you know?
Right.
And
At
law
least,
enforcement
like,
academy
even
is
the ones that
basically the
wash
same thing.
out.
Yeah, even law enforcement academy is basically the same thing. It's 8 to 10 weeks of, you know, somebody yelling at you and telling you when to make your bed and,
Right.
you know, when to eat and to do push-ups and, you know, all these things. So they demand that level of respect. And so I think there's definitely a place in the world where we could send everybody through some type of reform, if you will.
Well, so other countries, and I'm going to use this as an example, like not saying that we're anything like this or we need to be like Russia, but Russia has all their kids, all of them go through what they call conscription, which is mandatory military service. With the young kids, they don't have to serve the military, but they got to do something in that direction. And I don't know if it would be a good thing to force all kids to do it, but I think JROTC, which is Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, I believe that if all kids had to go through some of that, community service, working with your community, working in your community, doing the hard shit, right? I think that would make better citizens when they're older.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot to do with the generations. You know, I hate to keep beating that dead horse, right? But, you know, the generation we're in, like, let's face it, we always want to do better for our kids than was
Yes.
given for us. And I've heard you talk about that on your podcast before, right? We want to do better for our kids than what was provided for us. And our parents do better for us than what was provided for them. I mean, that's just the cycle that we're in.
Right.
But we're also our own worst enemies too, because we're trying to make everything better. We want to give them the things we didn't have, but we're also instilling in them a level of entitlement
Yes.
and spoiledness. And if you're not careful, you're gonna get to a point where everyone's going to be that level of entitlement, and that's where we're getting to as a society.
Where they think they're owed something just
Yes.
because they're alive.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, I was just raised where you did the work to get the benefits, right?
Yeah.
And now everybody wants the benefits without the work, and we've kind of created that, I think, as a society. I'm gonna put myself in there too.
Yeah.
With my kids, I mean, I want to give them as much as I can.
Yeah.
I still want them to learn that level of respect and have that humility that not everything's guaranteed.
Right.
But, it's just, I don't know. It's crazy to me, the level of entitlement.
Yeah.
And, I think if
people advocating for socialism and communism in 2025, that's wild to me.
and they don't even know what either one of the words mean, probably.
Exactly.
It's,
They just don't want to work.
Yeah.
They want, so I was talking to a guy on the podcast a few months ago, and he said that housing, food, and water are basic rights. And I'm like, in what world is that a basic right? I mean, if we were living in the middle of the damn jungle, nobody's going to bring me water. Nobody's going to bring me food. I'm going to have to go hunt for that and take care of myself. And I think people got used to allowing other people to make their decisions for them and giving up control of their lives. And they wonder why they're so unhappy, man. They wonder why, like, I can't go to the grocery store and spend over $600 without the government finding out about it. Mm-hmm. That's wild to me, because there's trillions of dollars that they're not accountable for. Mm-hmm. And people advocate for that. There's people out there that want that. And I'm like, look at your government now. You're never happy with them. You're never happy with the things that they do. Even when they do good, it's still pretty shitty, you know? And people are like, here, take more control. Here, take more of my money. And I'm like, they're already doing a shitty job with it the way it is. Why would you give them more?
I think it's funny when you say that people want people to tell them what to do and when to do it, instead of having to make those decisions for themselves. And, no one's responsible for our own happiness but ourselves.
That's right.
And yet we don't want to take control of that either. Yeah. As a society, we want somebody to tell us when we can be happy and when we can't. And we actually control that.
Yes.
We have complete, and we all forget it, myself included. I forget I have control over that. Sometimes I'll let things bring me down, and I'm like, why am I letting this bring me down? I'm in control of how I feel.
Exactly. It's that self-reflection there that I think separates people like you and me from the rest of the pack, because a lot of people aren't self-aware enough to question, hey, am I overreacting? Or am I sad for no reason? Should I perk up a little bit? Like, most people aren't that self-aware to be able to identify those moments as they're happening.
Right.
And for me, it's one of my favorite things to do is dissect why do I think this way? I'm very curious about everything. And I feel like most people don't understand or know themselves. And that's a big part of the problem. And I think the older generations, they didn't have as much to worry about as the newer generations. And I think a lot of boomers tend to forget, it was easier in the 60s and 70s to buy a home. It was easier in the 60s and 70s to, we didn't have cell phones back then.
You didn't have influence.
Yes.
And that's the key is, my parents, they didn't have so many people telling them what to do.
Yeah.
My parents had their parents, maybe a few aunt and uncles, but they didn't have the entire world
telling them what they should do or what they should think.
Through some form of influence through social media and the internet and computers. And I mean, it's just, we're in a different time, but the thing is people's allowed that to take full control, and it was never a problem. I mean, I was 18 before I ever had a cell phone.
Do you think there's something deeper in that the people in charge may be doing that on purpose?
I'd be willing to say that's probably true.
I think so too. I think our world is carefully designed to keep us unhappy and without knowing why we're unhappy.
And to look for somewhere else for happiness. And
Yes.
that's where they're putting that bait in front of you.
Exactly.
COVID showed us a lot.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, people talk about it all the time, but
I can't watch TV now.
COVID showed us a lot of how much control other people have
Yeah.
and how little control you have, but also how well you can do without that control.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of my,
It kind of molded us to a future that's pretty scary, in my opinion.
it is very scary. If you ever read that book, 1984?
No, I don't read.
I've not read the
I
whole
can
thing.
read, I just don't.
But they have audiobooks nowadays.
Yeah, that's my form of reading nowadays. Just put it in and listen to it riding down the road.
I think you're onto something there, because when that happened, it was like, we were okay. Like I'm not, so I was a stay-at-home dad at the time. And of course I was a big old fucking fat guy. I was 520 pounds at that time, when it first broke out. And I learned that was the first beginning of my understanding of the food industry, on how I got to be 520 pounds. And a lot of that was like self-indulgence, gluttony, all that good stuff that goes into like, and no discipline, didn't have any discipline. But a big part of it was also buying the dream that I was sold, that, this is how we do things. You go to the grocery store, you buy the stuff, and you eat the stuff. Well, back when I was a kid, we made our own shit. We made our own breads. We made, if we didn't, I say this on the podcast all the time, if we didn't shoot it, catch it, or grow it, we didn't eat it. Now, we obviously had government help, lots of government help, but I think that I was healthier back then, and I ate more than I do now. It wasn't processed shit, though. It was homemade stuff, with meat, vegetables, and potatoes. And we were healthier, man. And now COVID taught me a lot about that stuff.
Well, and you ration too, in a sense, because I mean, like you said, you had to get all of that stuff, and you only had so much of it.
Right.
And you come from a family size close to my size as well, and it was 5 of us in the home, mom, dad, and 3 kids. When it's gone, it's gone.
Yes.
And it wasn't like no endless supply. And so it was, you ate what you needed to eat. You didn't sit there and just glutton yourself and just eat to the point of being miserable, because there wasn't that much there to eat.
Food, yeah. My relationship with food was a lot different back then too.
Yeah.
Food was fuel. And that's kind of how I look at food now, as I've had, what is that weight? I had the sleeve weight loss surgery.
Yeah.
I lost 300 pounds, man.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I did it too.
Yes. And you look great as well.
Thanks.
You look phenomenal, man. So the issue that I found myself in during COVID was I had to change my relationship with food. I felt like I was sitting around waiting to die. And then I had that weight loss surgery, and I didn't even want to eat. But then I started, slowly going, towards the good foods. And then something switched all at once. And it's probably because we're broke, but we started cooking from scratch at home more. And it tastes so much better. I can't eat at restaurants anymore, man, because my wife is that good of a cook.
Yep.
And when we go out to restaurants and I have something, oh, this is pretty good, but I bet you can make it better at home. We figure it out from scratch. Like we discussed tonight having pizza, which we can't because we're going to go to a party and eat there. But tomorrow we're going to make pizza. And we're not making the pepperoni from scratch. We're buying the pepperoni, but everything else made from scratch. And except cheese, obviously, but
Yeah, that's a hard one there.
yes. But I mean, it taught me so much about the shit that we do eat and put on our bodies. And I still drink soda, which is a detriment to my health. but having moderation is the key. If I have maybe one 12-ounce soda, I'll make that last 2 or 3 hours, and I'll be active while I'm drinking that soda. Or like right after finishing the lawn. That's a good time to pop open a cold Pepsi. I just worked my ass off. So the calories that I'm drinking, calories in, calories out. Mm-hmm. I've heard that my whole life, but it's so freaking hard to go to the store and buy something that's within calorie range that I should be eating. Yep. Nobody should be having like more than, 1,000 calories in a meal. Nobody. Yep. And so often you'll go to the store and even the healthiest shit at the store is like 2,500 calories.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard people say you can shop around the outside aisle of the store and that's all you need?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everything you need is around the outside aisle.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, it's true. That's
if you go to
where your vegetables are, that's where the bread's at, that's where the meat's at, that's where the dairy's at. It's all around the outside.
Yep.
And if you're in a beer person, beer's usually on the outside too in some stores. But no, I mean, everything on the outside is like all your healthy stuff, and everything in the middle is the stuff you technically don't need. Yeah, the fillers. And no, you talked about the surgery, and I had that surgery in 2017.
Yeah.
And I got up to 428 pounds myself, and I lost 168 pounds. I'm holding about 260, 265 now.
Yeah.
But my problem was moderation.
Yeah.
I had no problem eating healthy. I mean, I could sit and eat a salad, and I love salad. It's one of my favorite.
Salad's gonna
but it was a big one, and it was probably 2 of them. We'd go to the buffet, and I'd eat a salad at the salad bar, and I'd eat 2 of them.
Yeah.
So moderation was always my problem. It was not a matter of the choices of the food. I had no problem making the good choice. I still didn't make them, but I could. It was just, if I'm going to eat chicken and broccoli, I'm going to have 3 pieces of chicken and, half a pound of broccoli.
Right.
And then have the ability to stop at times. And so having that surgery forced me to have that moderation. And I mean, it's been, 2017, we're 2025. So I'm coming up on 8 years?
Yeah.
And so it's been 8 years, and I still struggle with that moderation because, I still don't know from time to time how much of it.
Yeah, nothing's ever going back to normal, but there are some things that I can, like bread. Yep. Like I can eat a shit ton of bread. Like cake, I shouldn't be eating cake at all, but I could eat my weight in cake, and it won't bother me.
See, chips and crackers are my thing. Like, I don't know why, but
empty calories, I think, has a lot to do with that.
I can sit and eat a whole tube of Pringles and not be full.
Yeah.
But I can take 3 bites of a piece of steak and I'm full. Yes. And I'm like, what's the deal here? Or I can eat 2 or 3 packs of peanut butter and crackers and, not really bother me. And then I go to eat a pizza and I eat maybe 1 slice and I can't go more. And I'm full.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy that used to sit and eat a whole large pizza by myself before.
Yeah.
And now I'm a 1, maybe 2. We went to a party last night that had pizza on the menu, and I had like a piece of a chicken strip and maybe a half a slice of pizza.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I'm full. And if I drink anything with that,
eat like that, you know.
And if I drink anything, that's taking up capacity in my case.
Exactly.
We understand that now. But yeah, I mean, it's moderation was my hardest part.
Yeah.
And
I remember one time you and I went out to dinner together, and the size of our meals that came, like I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but like we were kind of proud of this at the moment. You ate an entire lasagna by yourself.
It's a family portion too.
Yeah. And I was like, man, look at that guy go.
Yep.
And we were doing things like that to our detriment. We knew it was killing us, but it didn't stop us.
Yeah. Like it goes like that competitive nature, right?
Yeah.
How many can I eat? I'll never forget. We used to eat sushi quite a bit, and we still do. And it was a place at home that had all you can eat sushi.
Yeah.
And it was like $19.99 for all you can eat. Well, I mean, that's the price of 2 sushi rolls if you went to a normal place. And
right.
So I remember eating 9 sushi rolls one meal, and I'm like, like a competition, see how many I could eat, But yeah, I mean, it was nothing for me to sit and eat like that.
Yeah.
And again, it just didn't know when to stop.
Yeah.
Now I have to.
Now when you think about it, you're like, I don't even I don't even want to do that shit.
Yeah, I don't want to eat
anymore,
that much now. I definitely don't want to be sick now. And
Yeah.
that's the way you get now when you eat that much.
Not me, man. I've never actually had that happen.
Really?
So one time, and eventually I'll tell this story on the podcast in full gross detail. But one time I did get sick from overeating, but I'm not sure if it was overeating or what I ate. And I ended up in the bathroom, in the bathtub, covered in my own shit. So it's not happened since, and that's one of the reasons why I'm like, my wife had to come in while I thought I was dying, dude. Like, it was that bad. Jeez. And she come in the room, she's like, I looked at you and you look so pitiful. I had the shower on. I was just laying over the bathtub, just dry fuming. And she's like, you look like you were half dead.
Oh, wow.
And
I'll never forget the first time I overate.
yeah,
It was about 2 months after. And,
yeah, this was about 6 months after.
And all I was eating was chicken and broccoli, but I had like 2 pieces of chicken left on my plate.
Yeah.
And, I was raised, you clean your plate.
Yeah, you got to play that mental game of chicken.
And I saw a couple pieces of chicken. I was, well, I can eat those last 2 pieces. I was raised, you clean your plate. You don't leave food. You don't waste it.
Yeah.
We worked hard for this. Don't you waste it, So I tried those last couple pieces of fish or chicken. And about an hour after, well, not even an hour, my body basically said, hey, look, you gave me too much. I don't need all this. You can have it back. You can have it back. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, man, I think that's a great place to leave this conversation. I appreciate you coming up and hanging out with me, man. This is
I've been looking forward to it.
First time you being on the podcast. We wanted to do this live in person, and I'm sure now that we've done this, we could do the Zoom calls and stuff.
Yeah.
You live 9 hours from me, so this wasn't easy, but it's been a year and a half coming in, and I'm very thankful that you came and hung out with me for a couple hours, and we got through everything that I wanted to talk about, which is very unusual for a podcast. There's usually some shit that I forget about. There's usually some stuff that I don't think about that I should have talked about. But this one went exactly.
Well, I'm sure
the
you'll
way I
come up
wanted
with
it
something that you wanted to talk about we didn't, and give us a reason to do it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But, I enjoyed it.
Awesome, man. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.